Middle of the country, but not middle of the road opinions. It's the podcast dedicated to sports in the air capital of the world.
I'm going to Wichita.
Wichita, Kansas, and beyond. With Tommy Castor and Blake Cripps. This is Keeper of the Games.
Some may say that we are wildly unqualified. Some may say we are only mildly entertaining. However, I say we are exactly where we are supposed to be, talking about the best defensive team in all of football, your Kansas City Chiefs, on episode 87 of the Keeper of the Games podcast, the podcast focusing on sports in and around and of interest to Wichita, Kansas. I am Blake Cripps, and we are not even going to get to the first segment before we bust out the hot take horn on my co-host, Mr. Tommy Castor, who literally complained about the defense for the first month of the season. And what does he do on Twitter during the Chiefs game? He says he is bored with the Chiefs game. Tommy, defend yourself.
I don't think I have anything to really defend.
What?
I mean, I really don't. I don't know why that's worthy of the hot take horn.
It is.
I even retracted my statement. I don't know if you followed up on a future tweet of mine.
I did not follow
as soon as Dan Sorensen had that pick six, I quote tweeted myself and said, never mind, I'm enjoying this game now. But yeah, for the first half especially, you're going to tell me that wasn't a boring football game to watch? That was absolutely a boring football game.
It was not a boring football. You're like a millennial now. Like, oh my gosh, unless we have offense and everybody's got a touchdown every single play. The Chiefs defense is playing well. How are you not totally geeked out and pumped up, ready to run through a wall for Andy Reid and Dirty Dan Sorensen and Tyrann Mathieu? How are you not just totally juiced about how they're playing defensively?
I mean, they're playing great football defensively. Now, I also want to go back to what you said at the beginning, that for the entire month, the first month of the season, I bagged on the Chiefs defense. Deservedly so.
I did too.
They played absolutely terrible defensively. Yes. To start the season. The turnaround that we've seen from this team, I know we're going to get into it later, is nothing short of spectacular in my opinion.
I can't even believe it. What I can believe is that you can get our podcasts at cogpod.podomatic.com. That's 100% believable. And I also believe that's the best place to get the podcast each and every week. But if you've got another service like Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google, so many other ones, we're all there. You can watch the videos if you dare on our Facebook page, Keeper of the Games. It's at facebook.com/Keeper of the Games, or on our YouTube channel. And of course, you can follow us at CogPod on Twitter. And if you wouldn't mind doing us a solid like, share, subscribe, maybe even share to a friend, maybe a friend who's moved out of the Wichita area and is desperate for some Wichita sports talk, because we actually do talk Wichita sports on this show, contrary to popular belief, you might want to give them a heads up. Like, hey, these guys might be worth listening to. Really appreciate it. Coming up on the show today, Kansas State shucks the Shockers, and we'll get to some news and notes. It's been a couple of weeks since our last show. By the way, this is our second to last show of the 2021 calendar year. We will have our holiday spectacular, which is going to be basically a regular show plus Weston Mills. So, which I realize, calling that a holiday spectacular, the hot take on myself. Nah, Weston, sorry, man. You're not that spectacular. But we are excited to have Weston back on the show, our founder emeritus of the program, next week. So look forward to that dropping a week from today on Tuesday. But we have to begin today with the Chiefs defense, which, as I said, they are basically the hottest thing in the NFL right now. Chiefs are 8-4. They've had a run of defensive dominance as they beat the Broncos 22-9 on Sunday Night Football on Sunday. Denver did not get a touchdown until the last 5 minutes of the game. They ran the ball fairly effectively. However, the Chiefs were able to overcome another lackluster offensive performance. Patrick Mahomes failed to throw a touchdown for just the fourth time in his career, but the defense picked off Teddy Bridgewater twice. Chiefs special teams picked up a fumble, and it was enough. A Juan Thornhill and Dirty Dan Sorensen interception. Dan had the pick six. Willie Gay Jr., Tyrann Mathieu led the Chiefs in tackles, and Denver was awful on third down in this game, 4 of 14. And the thing that I think I was most impressed with, Tommy, was the way that the Chiefs defense seemed like they really controlled the game, even though Denver controlled the clock. They won time of possession pretty big. They won, I think, 33-30 for the Broncos. So they had the ball for well over half the game, about 7 minutes more than the Chiefs did. But it didn't seem like the Chiefs were tired. It didn't seem like they were on the brink of collapsing. They didn't play well on that one scoring drive. It was late in the game. They were tired, and I get that. But other than that, the Chiefs defense really, from the first snap all the way to the last snap, with very, very few blemishes and exceptions in between, was exceptionally solid. And it's ridiculous that we're even having this conversation based on what we were talking about literally a month ago in November, about how the Chiefs have to figure it out defensively. When's the defense ever going to do anything? And now we're looking and saying, this is going to be the reason the Chiefs win the AFC West.
Yeah, you look at the last 4 games for Kansas City, they allowed 7 points against the Jordan Love-led Packers, 14 points against the Raiders, 9 points against the Dak Prescott-led Dallas Cowboys, and 9 points against the Denver Broncos. What they've done defensively is just incredible when you look at the way that they played on the defensive side of the football to start off the season. There's no question about that. I think what was really telling to me in watching that game, especially in the first half, was how quickly the Chiefs defenders moved to the ball. The closing speed was faster than I think I've ever seen the Chiefs defense move. A lot of that stems from Melvin Ingram. And I think what he's been able to do in his short time in Kansas City in re-energizing the defensive unit cannot go unstated. It's impressive. He was kind of an afterthought in Pittsburgh. He was a guy that was brought in for the Steelers, really never found his way. Pittsburgh was trying to find a way to get him out of town. The Chiefs were able to pick him up, and he's had a rejuvenated second half of the season so far with Kansas City under Steve Spagnuolo. So I don't think you can overstate how important he's been to the Chiefs defense, but he's not the only guy. We talked last week or 2 weeks ago, I think, on the program about Willie Gay and what he's brought defensively to Kansas City. He's a guy that should be, in my opinion, a Pro Bowler for years to come for Kansas City.
Pro Bowler this year, they keep playing like this.
Without a doubt, his impact has been incredible. And then, of course, the usual suspects in Chris Jones and Tyrann Mathieu. But Juan Thornhill has stepped up. I mean, he's had a couple of picks over his last couple of games. That secondary is looking better than it has all season long. And again, just going back to what I said before, that closing speed has been so important. The energy, the effort.
And I want to ask you about
Chiefs
that.
Defense
is this a
huge.
schematic difference for Kansas City? I almost think that this is just a between the eyes, like they're just playing with confidence. They've obviously made a schematic difference because they've changed where the personnel on the defensive line has lined up. That's the most notable, obvious change. But I just feel like, neither one of us is a defensive expert, didn't really play football on this show, but it just seems like them playing with confidence is just giving them, just a fearlessness of they're not worried about making a mistake. They're going to go make a play. And I think that's leading to exactly what you're talking about, just really flocking and attacking the football.
And you know what? I know we're going to get into talking about the offense here momentarily, but I think that some of it might have a little bit to do, and we talked about it on the show before, about how maybe the defense has always thought we don't have to play to our very best because we know that Patrick Mahomes and the offense are going to put up a ton of points, and it is what it is. That really hasn't happened this year, and the Chiefs have needed their defense to step up. I think that the importance that the defense has played in the success of the Chiefs moving forward is at a greater level than it has been in a long time. And so it makes me wonder if some of these guys realize that, like, hey, look, we are the game changers now.
They are.
We're not just the afterthought on this team. It's not all about the offense anymore. We've got to make sure that we are playing to the top of our abilities. And same thing with special teams too. I mean, again, you want to talk about flying to the ball. That fumble return off that punt was flying to the ball for sure. So I think that has something to do with it as well. The final point I want to make about the defense is that one of the old sayings in football is that the NFL season doesn't truly begin until after Thanksgiving. And so if the way that the defense is playing right now, if that has any indication on what things are going to look like for the rest of the season, I feel really good about where the Chiefs defense is at.
Their two best games have come these last 2 weeks. If you look at expected points and sabermetric stats, their best two games have come in these last 2 weeks. And in fact, 6 of their best 7 games have come in the last 7 weeks. The only clunker they really had was that loss at the Titans. Started to turn things around against Washington, but we poo-pooed it, and understandably so, because of how bad they had been. They had been no better than minus 17 points expected on defense over the first 5 weeks. But over the last 7 weeks, they had the clunker against Tennessee, but they have been positive each and every week. And the last 2 weeks, plus 16 versus Dallas, plus 8 versus Denver, which brings us, Tommy, to the offense, which has had its worst stretch of the season over these last 4 weeks. 3 of their last 4 games, negative expected points offensively. Now, they haven't had their worst game. That was, of course, against the Titans, because the whole team just sucked against the Tennessee Titans, which at the time was not that big of a deal or a surprise, because we both thought that Tennessee was a pretty good team. However, outside of absolutely shellacking the Raiders, and they looked all-time great that game, for sure. Can't take that away from them. They've just been okay, and at times really just not very good. Did not play well against the Packers. We both kind of agreed if Rodgers is there, maybe, looking back in hindsight as 2020 with how they're playing, maybe you can find a line and say, okay, if the Chiefs defense gets a crack at Aaron Rodgers, maybe they can do something. There was no reason to believe that at the time. But looking back now, knowing what we know now, sure, maybe they can find a way. But offensively, against the Broncos, -4, Patrick Mahomes throws another pick. I thought that there was some pretty shoddy receiver work in this game. Quite a few drops. One that would have been a first down that was wide, as they say in the business, Tom, and I know what this acronym means. WAO was how open that receiver was, and it's just dropped. It just seems like there's a lack of concentration, a lack of explosiveness in the running game, which there hasn't been, the running game hasn't been tremendous all year. It's always just been, be good enough. And 24 for 89 with 1 touchdown, honestly is good enough, but not when Patrick Mahomes is just a guy. And unfortunately, and I'm not saying to get rid of Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying that I am anything other than Patrick Mahomes is our generational next decade quarterback. But more often than not, this last month, he's been just kind of a guy. And at this point, I think you have to throw some caution on this offense and how consistent they are able to be. I think that they will be able to put up big points in certain games and show us what they did against Philadelphia, what they did a couple of weeks ago against the Raiders. However, the days of, at least for this season, of them just, basically rolling out of bed and dumping 40 or 50 on people, I just don't have any confidence that that's going to happen this year for the rest of this season.
I mean, you take away a Daniel Sorensen pick 6.
It's a close game.
The final score is 15-9, which is ugly. That's an ugly final score.
Offensively, it's not pretty at all.
In today's NFL, that's an ugly final score. I mean, look, like I definitely understand where you're coming from, and I agree with your sentiments to an extent. I think that when you look at the final line that the Chiefs had offensively, 178 yards passing, 89 rushing yards. I mean, they finished with under 300 offensive yards.
It's the last time that happened.
It's been a long time. Now, I don't want to take anything away from Denver's defense. They've got a pretty solid defense. That's, Vic Fangio is a defensive coach, and he has coached this Broncos team to try to be a dominant defensive team week in and week out and rely on that and not on Teddy Bridgewater and the offense. Although, if you compare the yardage between both teams, Denver had over 400 yards of total offense, and the Chiefs defense pretty much shut them down, by, like we talked about on third down.
Yeah, they were just,
but
the Chiefs defense was great on third down.
Yeah. But again, you take a look at, the Chiefs weren't all that better on third down. They were 5 of 12.
I think that they had a better,
the game.
I think Bridgewater had a better passer rating than Patrick Mahomes did.
Yeah, I think he did,
like 15 points or so.
The Chiefs only ran 54 plays throughout the entire game. Now, a lot of it was, the fact that there was a lot of running that Denver did. They really leaned on Javonte Williams quite a bit. But again, I do think that especially as we get deeper and deeper and deeper into the season, it's going to be important. We keep saying after every game, eventually the Chiefs offense is going to click. They're going to get it back. They're going to start to figure it out. They just really haven't. And so I think you have to start wondering, is this the new normal for Kansas City? Are the days of them throwing 40 some points up on a game week in and week out that you can expect and it make it look like a video game week in and week out? Are those days done? And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say, yeah, I think that they're done, but at the same time, NFL defenses and defensive coordinators are pretty smart and they're pretty good at adjustments. And it took a little while. I mean, Patrick Mahomes hacked the system when he came in to the NFL.
Well,
he truly did.
Look at what happened to Robert Griffin III. Look at what happened to Chip Kelly's offense when he went to Philadelphia. And look at what's happening right now to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, a couple of years ago, they're saying, this guy is going to ruin football. You're going to have all players like Lamar Jackson, and the pocket passer quarterback is just going to be irrelevant. And now Lamar Jackson looks just kind of like a guy. And, if you want to run that way, fine.
Who are the best quarterbacks today in the NFL? I mean, you're talking Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and probably Josh Allen, and those are three fairly traditional drop back pocket passers. Yeah. Look at Russell Wilson and the Seahawks.
Not having a good year.
They're having a good year at all, and Russell Wilson was the guy. Cam Newton can't even start in the NFL anymore. So I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes is not going to work out long term. I think he absolutely will be.
Especially if you believe in Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, which everybody on this podcast does. I have no doubt that they will get back close. Will they be back to the normal, like you said? I would say definitely not this year. But the good thing, Tommy, what's great is Kansas City really hasn't put together a complete game yet, where the defense is played as well as they can play and the offense is played as well as they can play. If they can do that in January and actually figure all that out, this will be the favorite to win the Super Bowl, whether or not they're the number one seed. And now it's a big if they can do that. But I firmly believe this best version of the defense and that best version of the offense is the best football team in the league. But if they can figure it out is a huge question mark.
That's why, I think Brett Veach is one of, if not the best general managers in football, because he recognized, and I think he had this thought like the rest of Chiefs Kingdom did when the Chiefs got absolutely shellacked by the Buccaneers in last year's Super Bowl, that, the recipe that we had for success worked in 2020 in the Super Bowl, but it didn't work in 2021. We've got to go back to the drawing board and figure out how we can get some better supporting pieces around Patrick Mahomes in that offense. And it really started with the offensive line, which has been better this year than last year. They haven't been great.
Improved. No, I'm not saying
but
great,
they're better. Yeah, they're better than what they were. And, of course, like defensively now, that's been, again, another priority for Brett Veach. And, in season moves like bringing in Melvin Ingram and that sort of thing have helped tremendously. But, I go back to kind of one of the defining games that I think about in the Patrick Mahomes era early on, and there have been a lot of them, but one of them I think about was that Monday Night Football game when the Chiefs played the Los Angeles Rams on the road in LA, and Kansas City, I think, lost that game 54-51 or something like that was the final score. I don't remember. I don't remember exactly what it was.
In the history of Monday Night Football.
Yeah. I don't think we see that again. I just don't. I don't think that that's the way. I don't think that's the norm. And I think a lot of people, the difference is that for a long time with Patrick Mahomes, I think everybody started to believe that the way that the Chiefs offense was performing was no longer the exception to the rule. It was now the rule. It was the way the NFL was going to be forever. It's looking a little bit more like the exception to the rule now. It doesn't mean, look at the Chiefs record right now. They're 8-4. They lead the division. They're finding different ways to win. They're leaning on different guys. That's what makes a Super Bowl caliber team, is finding different ways to win. on any given night against any given opponent. So, I'm not doubting the skills, the athleticism, the talent that Patrick Mahomes has. I still believe he's a once-in-a-generation quarterback. I still believe he has an incredibly powerful and dynamic and high-octane offense around him with big-time playmakers. I fully, wholeheartedly believe that, but I feel a lot more comfortable, sleeping at night knowing that the Chiefs' defense can show up too when they need to.
The Raiders are going to be coming into town. It'll be the second time that the Chiefs have played Las Vegas in a month. 12 o'clock for the kickoff, and that will be on CBS coming up on the 12th. That would be on Sunday. Next up on the docket, a huge in-state rivalry finally renewed for the first time in, I believe, 18 years, trailing by 2 at the half. Wichita State had a 12-point lead but could not hold, suffering a 7.5-minute scoreless drought as Kansas State came into the Air Capital and emerged victorious in the renewal of an in-state rivalry, stunning a sellout Intrust Bank Arena. It was not all black and gold, but it was predominantly black and gold. 65-59 yesterday, Sunday, for those of you watching the show, in a game, Tommy, where, again, the Wichita State defense was up to the task. Played great, played exceptionally well, but boy, was that Shocker offense smelly over that 7.5-minute stretch where the Shockers came up empty-handed 11 straight times. Tommy, is it more of an offensive problem for Wichita State, or is this a Kansas State defense that's going to make a mess of teams in the Big 12?
I think it's 100% huge concerns with the Wichita State offense. And I don't want to take anything away from Kansas State. I was actually impressed by the Wildcats, and they were able to
great
do this.
Offensively.
No, they didn't.
Stretch.
But the fact that they were able to win by 7 points, or whatever the final 6 points against a Shockers team,
trailing by 12 in the second half,
and while they were missing Nigel Pack and they played without Nigel Pack that entire game, that's impressive.
That is very impressive.
But I want to go back to this thought about Wichita State, and I'm going to take a second here and get on my soapbox, give myself a pat on the back for being correct about something. And this is something that I don't expect you to recognize or know about, because I don't think you heard me say this. But on Thursday, I had the distinct pleasure to fill in on Sports Daily on KFH.
Radio, but I may not have heard this take. So
yeah, so I had the pleasure of filling in for Bruce Hurdle alongside Jacob Albrecht on Sports Daily on Thursday. And we were breaking down the Shockers' victory on Wednesday night against Oklahoma State in Stillwater. And we were talking about the upcoming game at Intrust Bank Arena. And I said multiple times on that program, after they had went on the road and defeated the Cowboys, that I had some really, really big concerns and questions about the Shocker offense moving forward. And that take was not fully supported. Not only was it not supported, and I love Jacob to death, but I don't think Jacob really got on board with that. And I don't think that the couple folks that we had call in really responded to that either.
What were the concerns that you elaborated on?
Yeah, there were a couple concerns. I think number one is the fact that, and I think it became pretty evident in the game on Sunday against the Wildcats, there's very little ball movement from the Shockers right now. It's a lot of run the ball down the court and just try to find a shot. I didn't see a whole lot of set plays. And I don't have the stats. I guess I've got the stats here right in front of me. I was looking at, so the Shockers only had 8 assists in the entire game. And that was an issue, I thought, in the Oklahoma State game as well, where they didn't pass the ball a whole lot. And I think that that's an issue with coaching. I like Isaac Brown, but I'm not sure that there's a whole lot of offensive set plays being ran that are effective right now. Maybe he just hasn't found the secret sauce that works with his team. I also had concerns about the starting 5 and the production that the starting 5 had. And that was from the Oklahoma State game and previously, about how the Shockers, they fall into holes pretty early. They get down by quite a bit pretty early. They have a hard time leading at halftime, which we saw again on Sunday against the Wildcats. And then my other big complaint or big issue is that something's got to be figured out with Tyson Etienne. He is a National Player of the Year level player, but he, the last few games, has not played to that at all. Looking at his stat line on Sunday against the Wildcats, absolutely appalling.
Not good.
I mean, I think he was like 3 of 18 from the field.
4 of 20 and 1 of 11 from the 3-point line. He is 2 for his last 15 from downtown.
And maybe like 1 or 2 of those looks that he had were actually quality looks in that game. I mean, he was jacking up a lot of bad shots. So offensively, there are significant concerns with the Shockers. Now on the defensive side of the floor, completely different story. Dexter Dennis is fantastic, is locked down. Morris Udeze is a solid defender down low, I believe. But man, there are some significant issues with this offense moving forward. And I'll also say, before I turn it back over to you and we get into this more, I wholeheartedly believe, and I tweeted this after the game on Sunday, this is a much worse loss for Wichita State than it is a good win for Kansas State.
In what way do you mean?
As far as I think,
you think Wichita State has a higher profile? They had more to lose from this. I know there was some.
I agree. Yeah, I believe that.
It seems like Bruce Weber and maybe the announcers were kind of intimating that, Kansas State has something on the line here. You lose to a team like Wichita State.
Yeah, I don't think so. And maybe again, we're in December. There's a long way to go. And maybe this Wildcat team is on the come up. I don't know that for sure.
So what you're saying is you're thinking Kansas State on that may tank, and so this may be like maybe a Q3 loss for Wichita State.
I think this is a bad loss come tournament time for the Shockers. I think it will end up being that way. And I don't think that when I look at the Wildcats, I don't see a tournament team anyway. And so beating the Shockers,
even with Nigel
I don't
Pack?
think. I mean, I think that they'll be okay.
Nigel Pack, I think he'll make a difference.
I think that if anything, and we can get into more, the Wildcat stuff down the road when I'm actually, convinced one way or another about them. But I see them maybe being an NIT team at this point. So again, I think this is a much worse loss for the Shockers, who have kind of been on the bubble, here early on in the season. I think we're going to look back on this in March and think it was a bad loss.
Well, the thing that I think you would have to be very frustrated if you are a Shocker fan. You have Tyson Etienne. He's not going to have a great game every game. He's had a lot of good games so far.
But he hasn't had a good game in the last 4 games.
4 games ago, he put up 28 against UNLV. That to me is a good game. 28 points.
Tell me how he's done
shots.
against Missouri, Oklahoma State, and now Kansas.
He had 18 points on 17 shots against Missouri. He was fine. He was okay against Missouri. He shot 41% from the field, 3 of 9 from the 3-point line. Oklahoma State, he did not have a good game. He was
straight
up
bad against Oklahoma State.
He only had 7
and he was
shots.
straight up bad against Kansas State.
I agree, but you're going to me, that's not the biggest frustration. To me, you have Morris Udeze, who basically is unstoppable in this game. Kansas State has 0 answer for him, and he scores 19 points on 8 shots. We couldn't find him a couple more shots in this game. That to me is kind of inexplicable because
they're jacking up shots from that are low percentage shots, and Tyson Etienne led the way in that. And I like Tyson Etienne.
I love
like
Tyson
his
Etienne.
game.
He had a bad game.
He has shown that he is supremely talented. I expect more out of Tyson Etienne.
Well, I think I think he does
in high profile matchups, and it just hasn't been there the last couple of games. Also, I think it's important as kind of I feel like the team's undisputed offensive leader. I think he should be able to recognize when there are other guys on the team who are having an on night. Against Oklahoma State, it was Ricky Council, and he got his. On Sunday, it was Morris Udeze. And I think that in those clutch moments, I agree with you. It's important for the guy who sort of leads the way offensively to recognize who the hot hand is. If it's not him,
shots to get the Shockers win earlier in the year. I just want to remind everybody of.
He did, but he didn't have that the last couple of games.
I understand.
There were other guys who did, and it's important for Tyson Etienne to recognize maybe I don't have it tonight, but Morris does. Let's get the ball down to Big Mo and let him go to work.
Udeze should have been said
honestly. Some of that, again, it's not all on Tyson Etienne. Some of that's on Isaac Brown, and maybe it wasn't an emphasis that, hey, look, we've got to go more inside to Udeze. Maybe that just didn't happen. I don't know. I'm not in the huddles, but I think that those are things that need to be focused on moving forward. if it's going to be a different guy every night, okay, that's fine. But once that's identified, then continue to go after it.
I mean, I get it. And the only thing I would counter with is that there are other guys who I feel like have been letdowns to this point in the season. And the number one guy that comes to my mind is Craig Porter Jr. I understand it's a different standard because Tyson Etienne is the reigning American Player of the Year. He is the preseason Player of the Year. You know, he was in line, if he played well, maybe to be in some National Player of the Year conversations, depending on how the Shocker season went. But, you know, Craig Porter Jr. has 7 points over his last 3 games, 10 over his last 4. And he has, you know, he did not have a field goal attempt against Kansas State. And over the last 4 games, he is 2 for 15 from the field. So he's just kind of been a non-factor. I'm not saying he's not doing other things that help the Shockers in terms of defense, but he's also committed 8 turnovers in the last 2 games. So, you know, to me, it's a little bit of a stretch to put it all on Tyson Etienne. I get it. If you're the guy, you get the bulk of the credit when things go well, and you get more of the blame when things go poorly. I understand that. From the Kansas State perspective, I thought that they rebounded the ball reasonably well. Wichita State is not a great fast break team, so holding Wichita State to 3 fast break points is not necessarily, you know, that impressive to me. But I thought that, you know, Casey Eziegu was very, very good. He was extremely efficient, 14 points on 5 of 6 shooting. Mike McGurl and Marquise Noel were just okay. Ismail Masad and Mark Smith did not have really great games for Kansas State. But as you mentioned, they did not have their best player. But undisputably, would you agree, Nigel Pack, undisputed best player for Kansas State?
Oh, sure. I mean, you know, I think we've seen that throughout the early stretch of the season for Wichita or for Kansas State.
So Kansas State was able to do enough with the guys that they had. They found a way to stop probably going to be one of the best players in the American Athletic Conference. And, so give Kansas State some credit here. They had a game plan, and it worked. And maybe Tyson Etienne forced up some shots. I think, and Coach Brown said after the game, we needed to get the ball to Morris Udeze more, and I totally agree with that. Ricky Council only takes 2 threes in this game.
Well, and
can we get Ricky Council
surprising,
some more shots?
What's surprising to me about that is not only was Udeze incredibly efficient, I think he was 7 of 8 from the floor,
and he made 5 of 7 free throws. So, like, even if he's not going to get a shot, Wichita State, the one thing that they did well offensively, they got to the line. They were 16 of 20 from the foul line. Go get fouled.
And, I don't pretend to be, any kind of basketball savant or anything.
Neither one of us are going to be taking Isaac Brown. Right. Darren Boatwright's not going to be calling us to assist Isaac Brown anytime soon.
But I do know from watching the Shockers that one of the biggest things they rely on offensively are the ball screens. And those ball screens were not working against Kansas State. Credit Bruce Weber. Defensively, he had those ball screens read by his guys. And so rather than feeding the ball down low to Morris Udeze more when those ball screens weren't working, the Shockers were settling for, off the dribble jump shots, low percentage shots.
And it looked like that's what Kansas State wanted them to do. Like, we're
absolutely,
going to let you take these.
Absolutely. And, the fact is, hey, look, if you're going to take a 20-footer, what's the percentage on that, to drop? It's a lot less than if you feed the ball into Morris Udeze multiple times. So that's, in my opinion, that's the bailout. If the ball screens aren't working, get the ball down low. And again, that's on the coaching somewhat. It's on Isaac Brown to recognize, look, if the way we run our offense through ball screens is not working due to the Wildcats defense, we've got to go to our big guy down low who is making it work and converting. And they just didn't do that. I think had the Shockers done that more, we would be looking at a different outcome. Because I wholeheartedly believe that, especially with Nigel Pack not playing against the Shockers, maybe you'll disagree with this, but I think, in my opinion, Wichita State is a more talented team. They put a more talented team on the court than Kansas State has, but Kansas State just executed better.
I mean, honestly, I think Wichita State's a better team with Nigel Pack playing for Kansas State. That's my opinion. That's, Kansas State fans can rake me across the coals all they want.
Which is why I go back to what my original point was.
Worst loss
this is going to be
State.
A bad loss for the Shockers when we get to March.
The Shockers lost a 3-game winning streak, and now all of a sudden the Wildcats have a 3-game winning streak. After back-to-back losses to Arkansas and Illinois, they finally pick up a, kind of a marquee win for them after beating North Dakota and Albany. They beat the Shockers. Next up for Kansas State, the Big East Big 12 battle on Wednesday, 8 p.m. tip-off, ESPN2 at Bramlage in a color rush game as they take on Marquette. Meanwhile, the Shockers drop to 6-2. Their 3-game losing streak is history. They have lost both games by single digits this year. They've got Norfolk State coming in for the Teddy Bear toss on Saturday. That is a 6 o'clock tip-off, and you will need the plus for that one. Final segment of the show here today is going to be a new one that I am calling News and Notes. It's been a couple of weeks, and these are stories that are a lot, not necessarily all deserving of their own segment. However, stories that I think maybe are a little too long to get into additions, corrections, and retractions. We still will have some of those, by the way. But I did think we could spend the last few moments of this show before we get into our whip around talking about some of these stories. I'm going to start with Kansas volleyball getting into the Sweet 16 for the third time in program history, 2013, 2015, and this year with a 4-set win over Creighton, back-to-back wins over number 19 Oregon and number 20 Creighton to move to 18-11 on the year. They've got the third-ranked Pittsburgh volleyball team coming up at Fitzgerald Fieldhouse. KU played great defense. Even though that Creighton hit 245 as a team, KU hit 302. And I thought that, Creighton was hitting 245 and could have easily hit 280, 290 if KU didn't play the defense that they did in this match. So it's not like Creighton had an off night or didn't play well. KU took this with 21 kills from Caroline Bien, who is just a freshman. She hit 306 on 49 swings, which is insanity. 16 kills from Jenny Mosher. Bien is a freshman. Did I mention that? A freshman, by the way, Tommy. So for Kansas volleyball to get in 18-11, it was not necessarily a given that at 8-8 in the conference, even the conference with the strength that the Big 12 has, that KU was going to get in. This is a pretty big run here for Ray Bouchard in the Big Dance.
Yeah, shout out to Ray Bouchard and the entire program. I mean, it was maybe a month ago that there were questions about whether or not the Jayhawks would even make it into the NCAA tournament.
Definitely.
And, so I think that they are in a position now, and we use this phrase a lot with teams like the Jayhawks in tournaments like this, where they're playing with house money. That they're the Cinderella team, if you want to call it that. But ultimately, with there being questions, a month ago about whether or not they would even get into the NCAA tournament, and now they're upsetting teams left and right. That's a fun position to be in. It's kind of a let it ride mentality. Let's just go out there. Let's see what we can do. Let's take it one match at a time. And that's exactly what they've done. So hats off to them.
It is a noon first serve for them coming up next for the KU volleyball team, noon against Pittsburgh, and I'm going to find you the television for that in just a moment. Noon Pittsburgh on December 9th this week, so that'll be tomorrow as you're watching the show for the Jayhawks, and that will, I do not know if that will be on TV or not. Probably going to be on the Plus if it is anywhere. I don't think television has been announced for that quite yet. Next up, Newman basketball opening up play in the MIAA. The Jets fall to 0-2. They lose at Pittsburgh State. They are swept again at Missouri Southern. Very, very different games for both of these teams. Obviously, I was there for all of it as the voice of the Jets. The Newman women were completely outmatched, outclassed, did not come out with the right game plan. Coach Drew said after the game, "It's on me." They threw zone at Pittsburgh State, and it was 26-5 after 10 minutes, and they did not come back after that. They lost by 38. It was the biggest loss in a couple of years for Newman. Came back against Missouri Southern. They were down by 17 at Southern. They had a freshman, the Lions, who had gone for 33 the night before, set a Missouri Southern record. Lacey Stokes, little 5'4" Spitfire out of Missouri, little lefty guard who torched the Broncos of Central Oklahoma. She scored 11 points, did not score in the second half, down by 17 with 3 minutes left. The Jets hit the Lions with an 11-2 run. They score the last 7 and 85 seconds of the half, trail by 8. They get as close as 1 several times in the second. They cannot quite put it over the hump. And so the Jets, with 20 turnovers in this game, fall to 0-2, but showed some big-time growth in that second game there in Joplin. The Jets, with a couple of major heartbreakers, they lose both. They had the lead late in both. The last 5 minutes, Pittsburgh State switched into a zone. The Jets had a 7-point lead in that one, could not hold, had a 3 from the corner to tie the game with a second left on the clock, missed it against Missouri Southern. They have a 6-point lead with about 6 to go or 3 to go. Can't hold on to that, and they lose by 4. These games have been absolute wars for the Jet men, so much different. Going to be very interesting to see how both teams bounce back. The women will be playing an 0-2 Emporia State team. Now, they've played two very, very good teams, two nationally ranked teams in the MIAA last week, and they've got the number 1 scorer in the conference. And the Jet men will be playing an Emporia State team that also has the number 1 scorer in the conference. So if you like offense, you might want to come out to Fugate Gymnasium on Wednesday for the 5:30 doubleheader, because Emporia State's bringing some big-time offensive players, but early challenges and setbacks to both of these Newman teams. But, you beat Emporia State and Washburn this week in your 2 games, and you go 2-2. I think both teams are feeling very, very good about themselves going into the last week before Dead Week and the Christmas holiday in the MIAA schedule.
Yeah, it certainly seems like for both of these squads, there's a lot of learning and growing right now. And, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I'm not around the programs like you are, but it definitely seems like there is a culture that is being built. And it's, there not a lot of corners being cut. Like, it seems like there are things that are trying to be built the right way there at Newman against some really quality and really solid competition. So, I can imagine that the growing pains are difficult. It's tough, but we're talking about some high level D2 basketball in this state, and not just in the state, around the area, around the region also. So, obviously hats off to them. Hopefully they're able to get a couple of wins on the record for them.
Just to give you an idea of these games, Tommy, the Jets last week, the Jet men, they had 14 turnovers combined in the 2 games. They turned it over 5 times against Pittsburgh State and lost. They turned it over 9 times. And Pittsburgh State had the worst record in the MIAA. They had not beaten a Division II team. The Jets were picked 14th. Pitt State had the worst record in the league going into that game. And if you would have watched that game, both teams played exceptionally well. Both had less than 9 turnovers. You would have thought you were watching the 2 best teams in the entire league, maybe in the entire country in that game. So there's just no margin for error. These games have been extremely exciting. Once again, the Jets in doubleheader action tomorrow as you're watching the podcast against Emporia State, 5:30 doubleheader, 1:30 doubleheader on Saturday against Washburn. The last story that I've got to bring, Tommy, if you've got one, please feel free. KU falling to Dayton. They played in the ESPN Classic Thanksgiving weekend games. 6-1 heading into UTEP on today. That'll be tonight at the T-Mobile Center for a 7 p.m. tip. They did play St. John's and blew out the Redmen, or the Red Storm, whatever they're called by now, by 20. Hawks went on the road. 4 Hawks scored in double figures. Christian Brown torched St. John's with 31. Ojai had 23. Dave McCormick, 15 on 8 shots. He grabbed 13 rebounds. And I know that it was only like a 12-point game, but it just seemed like St. John's, Tommy, was never really in the game after, about the first portion of the first half in this one.
Yeah, that Dayton game, I was thinking
Dayton was
to
pretty
myself,
good, by the way.
They were good, but I was thinking to myself when that game got over, man, I'm a little bit bummed that we're not going to have a show right away, because I had a lot to say about that particular game, because we were off last week, so we haven't talked KU basketball
in a couple weeks,
in quite a while. The Dayton game had some similarities to the St. John's game. Now, obviously they beat St. John's, but I've got questions again about the KU offense. They're so supremely talented, but I don't for the life of me understand why the team has to be ran through David McCormick all the time. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
It wasn't against St. John.
I'm talking more about the Dayton game, that everything was fed through David McCormick, who was not effective whatsoever. He had a good game against St. John. He kind of settled himself down. I felt like was a little bit more effective, but man, he was bad against Dayton. And Bill Self kept force feeding the ball to him down low. I just don't get it when you've got dynamic playmakers like Remy Martin and Ochai Agbaji on the team, and Christian Brown has played outstanding also, why you feel like you've got to go to David McCormick over and over and over again. Of course, the defining play of the game for KU against Dayton was they had an opportunity to retake the lead late in the game, and the play that was drawn up was again a post play down to David McCormick. Couldn't gather, couldn't make the shot, and the Jayhawks lose. So that's a little frustrating. I don't love what David McCormick has done so far this season. That might be another discussion for another time, but at least I feel like the Jayhawks got kind of a get-right game against St. John's before they continue their non-conference play.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's necessarily been the focus of the offense. I mean, over the last 4 games, he hasn't had more than 8 shots, and he only had 6 shots against Dayton. Now, against North Texas and Dayton, he did not play well at all. He went 3 for 12 in those 2 games. So he had 2 games that were bad in a row. But against Iona and at St. John's, he's played well the last couple of games. 4 of 6 against Iona, 5 of 8 against St. John's. So I don't know if necessarily
do me a favor, though,
running the offense from him.
While you're going through his stat lines, though, tell me how many rebounds he's had.
I mean, he had his best rebounding game against, again, North Texas and Dayton. He did not have 2 good rebounding games. Rebounded the ball fairly well early in the season, with the exception of the Michigan State game. Michigan State game, his rebounding was basically a non-factor. But, hopefully he'll build on the St. John's. You know that I'm a David McCormick guy, always have been. So, I would just push back to say they're not running the offense through him. But I will admit, in the Dayton game and against North Texas, he was not as effective as he needs to be for this team to be successful, 100%.
I will also say, and I don't want to just pile on David McCormick. I feel like
you are, but go ahead.
Well, but I've got other people I can pile on too. I don't feel like Jalen Wilson has played up to his standards.
No, he's
since
off to
he's
a
been
slow
back
start.
this year.
Slow start.
And he obviously had some off the court issues to start the season. It might take him a little bit to kind of get acclimated to everything, but he's got to get it figured out also. And then don't be shocked, and I don't know this, but don't be shocked if next week during our holiday spectacular, we'll get a chance to hear from Weston Mills why Mitch Lightfoot is better than David McCormick. I'm just telling you, that's probably going to happen on the program next week.
Well, in that case, let's just cancel the appearance in that case, because that's not a discussion that I'm willing to have, even though Mitch Lightfoot this year, I mean, I'll be honest, this year, front to back, Mitch Lightfoot has been better than David McCormick in terms of offense. He has been. I mean, I'm willing.
Do you have the plus minus numbers in front of you?
I don't have the plus minus.
On,
maybe I may have overstated this a little bit.
Because I guarantee you, David McCormick's overall numbers are in the minus.
For the plus minus, and that is possibly true. The plus minus. Let's see, I don't have plus minus on these stats. I do know that David McCormick on the season is not shooting the same clip that he was last year. He's shooting 45%. Mitch Lightfoot is shooting 58%. So, yeah, I would not agree that Mitch Lightfoot is a better player than David McCormick. However, I would definitely say he's playing better than David McCormick this year in the minutes that he's gotten. No question about that. Now, McCormick has been a much better rebounder. He's averaging 2 more rebounds per game than Mitch Lightfoot. But and David McCormick has a lot more blocked shots than Mitch Lightfoot has. But yeah, offensively, in terms of the efficiency, McCormick, when Weston last year was questioning David McCormick, and he had the best points per shot on the team. So Weston last year was absolutely insane. This year, he would have a legitimate beef, 100%, because this year he is not been efficient, and that has hurt Kansas in some of these games. So without a doubt. Ochai with 23 in this game. By the way, he continues to be extremely impressive. Christian Brown's been a guy that's kind of been up and down a little bit, but obviously he's on a big, big high after that win as KU. He scored 31 for the Hawks. Any last-second thoughts here on the Jayhawks?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still waiting for Remy Martin to fully break out and be who Remy Martin can be. And I think some of that is Bill Self. I love Bill Self to death. But I think that Bill also wants Remy to play within his system, which is fair. He's the head coach. But I also think that Remy has the opportunity to really start to turn things on. Ochai Agbaji has been phenomenal to start the season.
Best player for
offensively.
Best player.
For sure. Might be one of the top 5 best players in the country right now.
Yeah.
The Jayhawks are ranked number 8. But I think the sky's the limit for this team. Bad loss against Dayton, but it was maybe a wake-up call that they needed. I know that a lot of times Coach Self uses that early season loss that tends to happen occasionally to really get his team motivated moving forward. So I still like where the Jayhawks stand. They've got probably more athletic, natural, pure athletic ability on this team and playmaking ability than we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, Dayton number 64 in the Haslametrics. So, yeah, not the kind of loss. I remember when they played in Maui and that Dayton game that KU won by like 1 score. And I thought this Dayton team is a Final Four team. KU kind of choked that one away against Dayton without a doubt. So next up, as I mentioned for them, UTEP 7 o'clock. That will be on Wednesday the 7th on the Plus. I am so upset that I cannot watch the Border War on Saturday. Not that I would ever give up being the voice of the Jets. 2:15, ESPN. It just sucks. I mean, what am I going to do? There's nothing I can do about it. It's the life and profession that I have chosen, but boy, I sure hope that the Jayhawks beat Missouri by about 1,000.
Can I tell you a couple of different things about that border war?
Yeah, you can.
I have nothing going on, but there's a good chance I will not watch it.
Why?
Because I'm on record. It's well documented that I am anti-border war. I think it's a complete waste of time
What do you mean?
that the Jayhawks are playing this game. I don't think that they have any reason to play Missouri. I don't think
The reason we play
benefits
Missouri is because
anybody.
we hate them.
I get it, but as far as a legitimate reason, as opposed to just we hate Missouri and they hate us, I don't see a reason.
Because the fans
for this game.
want you to play Missouri.
Nah, I just don't really care. I don't feel like it does anybody any good. I'm anti-border war in both football and basketball. There's no point. The rivalry ended. It's done. It's over with. There's no need to bring it back up from the dead, in my opinion.
That's about the hottest take that anyone's ever uttered on this show, because
It's the right take.
It's
the right
not
take.
the right take. Why is it the right? If Missouri ends up getting back, Missouri has been a top 25 program in the past. If they get back there, I mean, they're not there this year, but you can't schedule
Missouri
these games
also
years in advance. You don't know how good the program's going to be.
Missouri also lost by double digits against UMKC. They lost by like 20 or 30 points against Liberty last week. I just don't.
Like
I don't
said,
see a reason
schedule
for this.
these games years in advance. You don't necessarily know what kind of a Missouri team you're going to get. It's not like scheduling KU, where KU is going to be even, kind of like sex and pizza. Even when KU basketball's not at its best, it's still pretty good. So Missouri does not fall to that standard. Okay, I don't know what to tell you. You schedule these games in advance. The fans want it. I don't understand that opinion, but that's just me. Let's go to our final segment of the show.
I thought you told me if I had something in this segment.
I've given you opportunity. Do you have something?
Skipped over me. Yeah, I do have something. You totally skipped over me.
I was hoping to get a Wichita Thunder hockey update, to be honest.
That's exactly what I'm going to give you. Is a Wichita
because that's what I want. Give the people what they want.
You were going into the Wichita whip around. Regardless, it is what it is. Wichita Thunder update. Things are going pretty well for the Wichita Thunder right now. They, they
Glad to hear it. Tell me all about it.
They played in Tulsa on Sunday. Unfortunately, lost that game 5-2. However, the previous 11 games, the Thunder were 9-1-1 and had a share of first place in the Mountain Division of the ECHL. So things looking pretty good for the Thunder after a fairly rough start to the season. I believe they started the season 1-4 or 1-5, but since that time, we're able to really turn things around. They currently stand at 10-6-1 with 21 overall points on the season. Ultimately, they're tied for second place behind the Idaho Steelheads. They're back in action this week, 2 games against the Allen Americans on Thursday and Friday. Thursday is a Throwback Thursday game. Friday, Santa Claus will be in attendance for pictures with the kids, so that's always a lot of fun. But a couple of other quick notes about the Thunder. 2 of their top players, Timmy Soderlund and also Mateo Gennaro were called up to Bakersfield, so they are no longer with the team. And their goaltender, Evan Beitenheis, set the Thunder record for consecutive starts in a season in a row. He started 16 games in a row, broke the Thunder record for that. So pretty crazy stuff.
Anything else for you, sir?
That's all
Good.
I got.
I'm glad. Thanks for the update. Appreciate
got
it.
it.
You know what else I'd appreciate? If we hit the music for the Wichita Whip Around. If it didn't fit into news and notes, we're going to get to it now. So, Tommy, start whipping first. What is your whip around story for this week on the Cod Pod?
Well, of course, if you live in Wichita, if you've lived in Wichita for any time at all, you know about the legend of iconic women's basketball player Lynette Woodard here in Wichita. She was honored by her alma mater, North High School, last week, a dedication ceremony, and the new basketball court at North High School named after Lynette Woodard. Of course, a lot of huge athletic names coming out of North High School over the years, including the one and only Barry Sanders. But over the weekend, it was Lynette Woodard's time to shine. You know, she's been in Wichita for a long time. Definitely a huge honor for sure. The school dedicated the court in her honor, and her name is now on each sideline. She hasn't played for North High in nearly 45 years, so long overdue, but well-deserved for Lynette Woodard.
Lynette Woodard also, of course, a fantastic collegiate career at the University of Kansas. Probably the best lady skin player that there has ever been for Wichita North. I can't imagine there's anybody else better.
She was the first woman to ever play for the Harlem Globetrotters.
Yes, of course.
Interesting fact.
We, of course, have got to get you updated on state championship football. 5A Mill Valley is able to take it. The 5A championship, they beat Mays 28-14. Derby fell in 6A, 41-21 to Blue Valley Northwest. So after talking about all this strength from this part of the state, did not get it done there where it mattered at the top. But of course, and thank goodness we are doing it this week and not next week, the Andale Indians do polish off the 13-0 season. The last 5 classifications, 3A on down to Class 8 players, D1 and D2 8-man football, all finished with perfect 13-0 records. Rossville, Opie, Meade, and Axtell won the other ones, but Andale is your 3A champion, and Andale absolutely blew up Frontenac 53-0 Indians. So, I mean, what more can you say about this program? You know, we've talked about Brandon Clark. We talk about Weston Schartz. We talk about Alan Shuckman and Dusty Trail and Rick Wheeler and all these great coaches. We probably should talk about Dylan Schmidt, because his program at Andale is unbelievable. And I told people, this happened when I was on the radio. I said, if you think Andale is good in 4A, I'm telling you, when they drop to 3A, it's over. It is over when they get to 3A. They will absolutely run the classification for as long as they are allowed to go in and beat people's brains out. And that's exactly what they did. 54-14. They started out their first round game. They beat Holcomb 51-0. Concordia sectional 54-14. Southeast of Saline 37-16. They're one close game. And then they beat Frontenac 53-0. This Andale team is set up for a run of dominance like maybe we've never seen before in 3A.
Well, they've been dominant for a long time. I mean, it's
not necessarily
it's
winning
not
state
like
championships, though. Bishop
right,
Miege has
but
had something to do with that.
Right. They've been dominant, though, for a long time, at least running this part of the state for a long time, regardless if it's 4A or 3A. There's got to be something in the water there in Andale. I mean, because I think
why
a lot
didn't
of
Weston get like a single drop of it? Everybody that comes out of Andale is magic, but then there's Weston. Like, what happened?
Yeah, I'm sure that we'll hear more about that next week when he's on the program. But no, there's got to be something in the water, because I think it's got to be, you know, I don't exactly know what the youth football looks like in Andale, but they've got to be starting these kids up young and getting them, you know, ingratiated into the program that they're going to be running in high school at a young age. That's the only thing I can think of, because it runs like a well-oiled machine year in and year out. And let's not forget, Frontenac They made it to the state championship game. They're not a slouch of a football team.
Yeah,
they made it to the state championship game and got absolutely shellacked by Andale. So yeah, I mean, again, what more is there to say about what Andale has done in football than we've already said, and anything more than what Weston will say next week?
I guess
I don't know.
There can't be anything more than Weston has to say next week. That's for sure.
True.
We go on to the additions, corrections, and retractions. One correction on both of us, Tommy. Last time Kansas City had under 300 yards of offense was actually just a couple of games ago. Happened against the Packers, so we were both wrong on that one. Any more for you in that category?
I don't. I have nothing.
One addition, or actually a couple of additions for me. Kansas State football is heading to the Tax Act Texas Bowl. We will have Kansas State football previewed for you next week as a segment on the show. And Buck O'Neil is into the Hall of Fame. I still don't completely understand how this happened or why it was allowed to happen, because I remember when he got left out, I thought it was the last time on the ballot, and now he's in. The only thing that I know is that it was overdue, and the fact that he didn't get voted in the first time was a travesty. I remember being in sports talk radio, and this was not a conversation we had on the air, but one of my coworkers there was literally trying to tell me that Buck O'Neil should not be in the Hall of Fame. He was saying, oh, his OBP or his WAR was not high enough. I'm like, are you the biggest doofus? I said, I may not have been this nice. Normally, I think it's pretty bad form to just roast your friends or your former coworkers, especially if you don't work with each other every day anymore on Twitter. I think that's kind of actually pretty essy, to be quite honest. But I literally blew this guy up and said, if you are using stats to argue Buck O'Neil not being in the Hall of Fame, you don't get it. This guy is an ambassador, check. Negro Leagues, check. All scout for 1,000 years for the Royals, check. I mean, ambassador for the game of baseball. Like, he has literally every non-tangible metric that you would use to put somebody into the Hall of Fame. I get that he's not a Hall of Fame player. I understand. But is he a baseball Hall of Famer? I mean, the answer is it's not only just yes, not only just hell yes, but duh. Like, why is this even a conversation? Of course Buck O'Neil is a Hall of Famer. It should have happened probably 11 years ago, maybe 21 years ago. Thank goodness it is finally going to happen in 2022.
Yeah, incredibly well-deserved for Buck O'Neil. And just, again, yeah, I totally agree with you. It's not about the stats. It's about the impact. It's about the lasting impact that someone like Buck O'Neil has to the game. So, that's huge. I guess I do have a couple more additions very quickly. Fine. You mentioned K-State football and their bowl game. Chris Kleiman announced that he has fired offensive coordinator Courtney Messingham. He will not be with the team during the bowl game. Colin Klein will be coaching the offense during the bowl game. No word yet if Colin Klein will be the permanent offensive coordinator or if Chris Kleiman will go outside to hire someone else. And then also KU football. There were a couple of assistant coaches that are not returning for Lance Leipold, but the news today, Emmett Jones has left the team. He has joined Texas Tech University. Emmett Jones served as the interim head coach after Les Miles was fired earlier in 2021. And it looks like that there already is a replacement. One of the Syracuse assistant coaches will be joining KU football. And finally, my only other addition is that you mentioned Buck O'Neil in baseball. That reminded me that we are currently in the middle of the Major League Baseball lockout that happened
that's true.
Just a couple of days ago. As it relates to Wichita, I did see that the Wichita Wind Surge released a statement saying that the MLB lockout does not impact minor league baseball, and so they are still planning for opening day as scheduled next year in 2022.
Yeah, first lockout in like over a decade, I think, something like that. We'll see if they can.
1994.
1994
was the last time.
So like almost two decades. So we'll see if they can get together, and if mommy and daddy still love each other here in a couple of months, so we can get pitchers and catchers are due to report here in about 2.5 months. So we'll see.
At least we know that allegedly it will not impact.
Yeah, at
minor league
least
baseball.
the wind surge will be allowed to continue. That would be pretty rough to lose a season to coronavirus and then a major league lockout trying to start a baseball tradition here in Wichita. That would be a tough pill to swallow for sure.
Yep.
That is our show for this week. Once again, we appreciate everybody liking, subscribing, sharing, following the show at cogsports.com for the website. And of course, make sure you ring that bell notification if you're watching on YouTube, or like the page on Facebook and share it with a friend. We really appreciate all of the love and the support. We will see you next week for episode 88, our last week of the year. We will preview the Tax Act Bowl. We will talk plenty of Chiefs, and probably going to wrap up the show. I'm not sure we're going to get to David McCormick and the Jayhawks, because next week, Tommy, you may have forgotten, it is our KU football season in review with Weston. A lot more excited to actually do this segment than I thought I was going to be, based on how the first month of the year went. So those will be the three main dockets for us next week, and our last show of the 2021 calendar year, and the last show of this is segment 2 of the Cog Pod, correct?
Season 2, Season 2 will come to a close.
Last one of season 2, so the last show of the 2021 calendar year will come up next week. So Weston is planning to join us, so we will plan to see you then. It'll be dropping on Tuesday as normal, so hope to see you then. Thank you so much for the support. Tommy, for our beloved audio listeners, if they aren't following at CogPod on Twitter, first of all, shame on them, but they should also be following you on Twitter, and where would that be?
You are damn right. They should absolutely be following me on Twitter. You can follow me anytime at Tweets from Tommy.
And it's a lot more fun to follow him on Twitter when his Twitter is not locked.
Yeah, all you got to do is follow me for brilliant takes like the border war is useless.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Or if you want more correct takes that are not necessarily politically correct, you can follow me at Cripps, BECRIPPS on Twitter. Thanks so much for watching or listening. We'll see you next week on the Keeper of the Games.
Take care, guys.
You've been listening to Keeper of the Games. Don't forget to subscribe, download, and listen on all major podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and more. Visit our website at cogsports.com. Find the podcast and videos on Facebook and YouTube at Keeper of the Games, and follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at CogPod. That's KOG Pod.